Hello, I'm Pamela Arora, CEO of AAMI, and I'm here at HIMSS 2023. And I'm visited today by Tom Leary, who's the head of public policy for HIMSS. He's carved out time in his very busy schedule on a very important day. Tom, can you share what today is?
Absolutely. And thank you, Pamela, for including me in this great series that you have. Today is Health Equity Day at HIMSS23, and it's intended to really highlight what we can do across the globe to improve access to timely healthcare and how health IT and standards can be supportive of that.
Absolutely. And from the standpoint of the regulators within the U.S., you've been chatting with them along the way, as well as regulators across the globe. Was there any kind of themes that came out about health equity?
Absolutely. We, as you know, in the United States, we have a report that comes out every couple of years from the CDC that talks about maternal health and maternal mortality. Been a lot of conversation this week, particularly about how do we utilize technology to overcome maternal mortality issues, particularly because 85% of maternal deaths are preventable. So yes. How can health IT be utilized? And then, of course, throughout the conference, we've had some great milestones around making sure that technology, particularly as we look to more towards AI, how it can ensure that persons of color, the algorithms take into account whether it's skin tone or some of the other challenges that we saw during the pandemic. A lot of conversation in the hallways and on the show floor about how technology can overcome even its preconceived notions about people.
The biases that could be introduced with the data. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The one other comment too that seemed to be coming out in the course of the conference is different locations for care delivery and how that can be changing tremendously. That whole care in the home or wherever the patient might be, where they live, learn, work, and play. And from that standpoint, it seems like all this interoperability is key to making that occur.
Absolutely.
It's so busy for Tom. He's kind of rushing between meetings right now, but I didn't want us to miss the opportunity to hear how public policy is impacting what our stakeholders are concerned about, which includes that safe care delivery, but impact of that integration of those medical devices into the EMR and how that can impact things. But regulatory can certainly encourage that or dissuade that. If you can talk a little bit about what's been discussed in the conference here.
Absolutely. And thanks again, Pamela, for including me in this wonderful series you have. What we've been hearing a lot about the last couple of days is, of course, finding the balance between regulating and innovation. And it seems like regardless of what country you talk to, it's a big theme for them this year is we want to regulate so that we control a little bit of where the data goes and how it's used and privacy and we can get into security and moment, but then how much of the regulation slows down innovation, and so finding that balance is one of the first topics that we heard on Monday, and we've heard it repeatedly throughout the week. And then more close to the U.S., and I guess it will eventually impact the rest of the globe, is the idea of clinical decision support and this new guidance by the FDA. They were part of a panel on Monday and then again on Tuesday talking about their new clinical decision support guidance that and how some of the suggestions that they're making is that they're creeping more into portions of the EHR perhaps could be seen as a medical device and therefore subject to FDA approval. So that's been a bit of a buzz, particularly in the EHR companies and some of the healthcare systems that have homegrown activities.
Absolutely, yeah. And from a med device standpoint, exactly. That would be a huge factor as well. As far as the number of countries, you mentioned regulatory, and certainly the FDA we're very familiar with in North America here, but how many countries are represented here at HIMSS?
We have 85 countries represented this year, and it's the last couple of years we've had had a good number, particularly on the virtual aspect. But this is the first time that since 2019 or 2018 that we've had the wave of actual individuals here. That from the Netherlands sending close to 200 people, and other countries of note. Taiwan has a strong contingent. Saudi Arabia and UAE have both sent some great folks, and it's just throughout the world, really, the representation. And interestingly enough, from our work together, there was some great activity on the Brazil had a day of education specifically yesterday, and the day before that was all the Spanish-speaking countries, because of course they had to split it out a little bit between Portuguese and Spanish. But LATAM or LATAC countries were Tuesday, and Brazil had a conference on Wednesday.
Excellent, excellent. The interoperability theme seems to be around the globe. Everyone
Absolutely.
wants the connected devices, and part of that is so the data can be flow in and then be used for things like AI.
Absolutely.
From the standpoint of looking across the globe, the U.S. has its focus in privacy. We're all familiar with HIPAA. What are you seeing in these other nations as far as the direction they're taking with the privacy issues? Because GDPR is even yet a higher bar relative to what's required.
Absolutely. GDPR has created a new floor, if you will, for a lot of multinational companies. They'll build it's becoming the unwritten standard for where multinational companies are building their capabilities. Other activities that we're seeing, though, is countries like Singapore and Taiwan and Japan are getting more serious about their privacy, the structure of their privacy legislation and regulation. So we've had actually 2 delegations meeting here at HIMSS23 with. They specifically asked to meet with not just the U.S. federal government. In fact, that conversation is happening this afternoon.
Okay.
But yesterday they wanted to hear at the state and then local levels. So they met with the city of Chicago's privacy officer.
Excellent.
And then they met with the state of Illinois' privacy staff. So it's what we may find some frustration with HIPAA because we live with it every day. They don't have, and they want to make sure that they create legislation that leads to good regulation that doesn't pull back on that innovation. So it's an interesting balance that we're seeing.
You did make a good point, though, is for the global organization. So if you're a manufacturer of a med device, you don't want to build it different
Right.
for one region, the EU, or for Asia Pac. You want to build it for global, because otherwise you have to have the difficulty of basically having various different solutions for the same device.
Absolutely.
So while HIPAA is at a different bar than GDPR, many of the U.S. Based hospital systems will have the benefit of some of that higher bar of the ability around that additional privacy, which is interesting.
The question there, though, for companies and for your members, is that the U.S. has been toying with new privacy legislation, and unless Congress gets super serious about it, GDPR will just be the de facto
standard at that point.
Absolutely, yeah.
From a regulatory standpoint, has there been any other aspects that have been key themes around standards relative to what you've been hearing at the conference?
There's new draft regulation of ONC that is the last piece of their puzzle, if you will, for the 21st Century Cures Act. Of course, that passed in the end of 2016, and then there's a series of regulations that came out over the course of 2019 and 2020 from HHS. There's ONC and Office of Civil Rights have put out some regulations, and now ONC is putting together their last piece of regulation. Public comments are due by June 8th, but it's to really answer the final pieces of the question around information blocking and interoperability. So we're just now starting to dive into it. I guess along those lines, there's a lot of curiosity around the certification program.
Okay.
The last time that ONC it's a 2015 certification, and we're getting to a point where they were hoping for using 2015 and then having industry with all the work that you guys do is incredibly helpful to how to build on that baseline 2015 certification. So the questions that we've been hearing in the hallways is has ONC adopted enough of what industry has built, or as we head into new levels of innovation, are there new requirements for certification, particularly in the public health space as we really don't invest a lot more in bringing the public health information system structure up to par.
For health equality and equity
Absolutely.
Across the
Correct.
ecosystem. Also, from the standpoint of being top of mind on everyone's mind around cyber, there's all this discussion of interoperability, the data flowing, that going into artificial intelligence, but we know that it falls like a house of cards if it isn't cyber secure, because at that point it's no longer safe care. What have you been hearing relative to the public policy? Do other governments have a better way that they're addressing this? Any thoughts there?
Actually, a lot of conversation about cybersecurity as the bad actors, both state-sponsored and independent bad actors, continue to target healthcare and it's not just U.S. We see the headlines in the United States for ransomware attacks and things like that, but it's across the globe. In fact, the two things that have happened this week. One is at the Cyber Command Center, as part of the Cyber Summit on Monday, the Health Sector Coordinating Council's Cyber Task Force released the latest version of what they call the hiccup. Don't ask me to identify what the hiccup means, but if we think back to 2015, there was no legislation around cyber protection across the U.S. and the CISA, the Cyber Infrastructure Security Act, was created to include healthcare and what many people know as the 405C and the 405D committees.
Mm-hmm.
The 405D committee continues. They put out a series of activities over the last couple of years, but on Monday they released the latest version of the hiccup, and it's really a toolkit to help everyone from the smallest doctor's office, one doctor practice, to the largest multinational organizations, and everyone in between figure out improve being more cyber secure, I guess is the best way to put it.
Absolutely.
So that happened on Monday. And then on yesterday, there was a big conversation. There was Taiwan again. They were hit a few weeks ago, and so they're roaming the halls trying to talk to as many organizations and countries as possible to help understand, and so they can be have more improvement on their cyber preparedness. So it's really a theme across the conference.
It needs to be, because the data won't be used if it's not trusted, and if it's compromised, we really won't be able to get to those higher levels of care.
Absolutely.
The bad actors sure know how to collaborate. We need to collaborate across the globe as well.
Well, that's the nice thing about this 405D requirements and this hiccup, is that HHS has a requirement from Congress to start to work with their counterparts across the globe. So it's both industry and government saying enough is enough.
Excellent. Well, with interoperability, standards, cybersecurity, and all the thought leadership around AI, I'd say you've been having one heck of a conference this week.
Absolutely.
And we really appreciate you sharing with our members.
I appreciate all your time, and I appreciate our collaboration and friendship.
Absolutely. We'll continue to partner well. Thanks so much, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Pamela.